Okay, so remember that when you're factoring, you always factor out the GCF first. This is what you always do no matter what the problem looks like. We saw before that if a trinomial, we do the sum and product and we factor by grouping, but now what we're going to do is if we see a binomial, we're actually going to make the middle term into 0x and make it look like a trinomial, and then the rest of it is going to look just like regular trinomial grouping. Okay, so let's start with an example. And so I'm going to start with a pretty basic example. X squared minus 16. Alright, so we would want to first check for the GCF. X squared and 16, they don't share any factors at all, so we check that. We don't have to do anything with that when the GCF is just 1, okay? But we always want to check for that first. Can't stress that enough. Alright, now this is a binomial. It's a binomial because it has two terms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite it to be x squared plus 0x into the middle and then minus 16. And now it's going to look just like a trinomial. Okay, so now we need to find the sum. Remember, you always find the sum by doing the middle term, which is 0 in this case. And if you had to make the middle term 0, you really should know that. Alright. The first number is a 1, and then I'm going to multiply that to the last number, which is negative 16. So our product is negative 16. Now, whenever your sum is 0, you're really looking for two numbers that are the same, but one's positive and one's negative. So you're really just thinking, okay, what times itself is 16? Well, that's 4. So one of these has to be positive and one has to be negative. It really doesn't matter if the first one's positive or the second one. That makes a sum of 0. Negative 4 plus 4 makes a sum of 0, and when you multiply them, you get negative 16. And please use your calculator as much as you need to make sure you find these two numbers. Okay, so now we rewrite, and so we kind of worked our way from 2 terms to 3 terms, and now we're rewriting into 4 terms. And I wrote a plus there, and so I didn't mean to do that. I need to write a minus because I wrote that first over there. Minus 4x plus 4x minus 16. And we need to look at the first group. I can factor out an x in the first group. That's the GCF of the first group. When I divide out or factor out an x from x squared, I'm left with x. When I divide out an x from negative 4x, I'm left with minus 4. Okay, now I look at the second group. Since I have a plus here, I'm going to rewrite my plus, and I need to find the GCF of 4x and negative 16. Use your calculator if you need to. Find the GCF, or on your calculator it's called the GCD. Hopefully this is getting a little bit easier though. The GCF of the second group is 4, so when I factor out a 4 from 4x, I'm left with x, and remember here you might have to divide in your calculator if you don't know. Negative 16 divided by 4, that's minus 4. So then our first group is x plus 4. That's my first group. My second group is this term, which we said on all our other examples, it has to be the same. All right, now some of you may notice that there is a slight little shortcut we could have taken on this. I'm not going to go over that in this video, but if you notice it, good job. All right, if you don't notice it, that's okay. You don't need it. Alright, so remember that when you want to check this, you can do it 2 ways. Probably the easiest way for you to check is to plug the original problem into y1, plug the answer into y2, and you want to make sure that the tables match. That will tell you that you factored it correctly. The way you can do this in your calculator, without your calculator, is to take the x plus 4, x minus 4, and multiply it out like how we did last unit, and you should get your answer, which is x squared minus 16. Okay, let's try one more example. This one's going to be just a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to have 2x squared minus 200. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is to factor out the GCF. We want to look at the 2x squared, look at the 200, see is there a greatest common factor, and there is, and it's 2. I can factor out or divide out 2 squared from both terms, and I'm left with x squared minus 100. Okay, remember this is always what you do first. All right, now, if we go through our list, we know what to do if this is a trinomial, but remember if this is a binomial, we have to rewrite it so that the middle term is 0x. Now we're ready to do sum and product. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to abbreviate here S and P, S being the sum, which was 0, because we wrote it in, so we should know what the sum is. The product, don't multiply the 2. It's the number in front of x squared times the negative 100. That's our product, negative 100. Remember, you're looking for the numbers that add to 0, so it should be the same number but positive and negative, and they multiply to negative 100. So what times itself is 100? 10. So I'm going to use negative 10 and 10. Those are my two numbers. So keep writing the 2. It's the GCF. We're just going to keep writing it. Now I have 1x squared minus 10x plus 10x minus 100. This is just like what we do for trinomials. You can see here that negative 10x plus 10x would be 0, so it makes sense that these are the same. Alright, now I have 2 pairs. Okay, keep writing the 2. Alright, and at this time I'm even going to switch colors just to really emphasize the change. Okay, so the 2 I just wrote right there. Now, in the first group, I can factor out an x, and I'm left with x minus 10. Bring down the plus. What is the number GCF for the second group? It's 10. And if you factor out or divide out 10, you're left with x minus 10. So then I have a 2 out in front. One group is x plus 10. You're just grouping those together. The other one is the x minus 10, which is the other group. Again, you can check this by putting the original problem in y1, the answer in y2, and you're checking to see that your tables match. That will tell you that you did this correctly. You could also multiply it out algebraically.